So I just want to discuss some of the findings in a recent experiment I did using LookingGlass. I pretty much tested out universe similarity and epoch amounts and tweaking those parameters to see how they affect an output image given a certain input image. Now I will be overviewing my article on it for the video. If you want to take a deeper dive into the article, I'll have it linked in the description down below. I won't read everything because it's not necessary. So pretty much my experiment went as follows. I used this input image for every single iteration of the experiment I did. And I pretty much switched between each universal similarity value, so low, medium, and high. And I ran them through epoch values of 50, 60, 70, and 80 respectively. The findings are pretty substantial. And what it shows is that there's multiple ways of actually using LookingGlass. So you can use LookingGlass for, say, something like uniformity of characters and world building, because it can nicely iterate through possibilities while still keeping some sense of consistency. But for lack of a better phrase, it can also be used as a contemporary fine art machine, considering that all these here and all these here and even all these here, these are all generated using this initial input image. Something I just briefly want to discuss though is the idea of losses. So amongst all levels of universe similarity as well as epoch amounts, you're going to have losses. And by losses I mean, let me just scroll down to it. So by losses I mean this here. Losses pretty much are when the features of our image become so distorted that they are arguably no longer usable. Considering our input image and the outputs, these obviously are not something that we would be looking for when using that kind of input image. Something I do want to note is that when using low universe similarity, if you want something that is not your input image, so let's abstract this. If I want an art piece, an illustration or painting like vibe like what this is here, but I don't want it to look like this. This is just the limitations of myself as an artist. And I want something that is a face and somewhat painted with a bit of geometry with it. You would want to reside in low universe similarity. As you can see from all this, the ability for this algorithm to change between artistic styles is absolutely immaculate. And the possibilities of that really open up when you consider that all of these can also be used as input images for the algorithm. Something that I did notice about LookingGlass and the way that it works is that when analyzing my input image, there's certain things about this image that are weak. By that I mean, here we do not have the character's hair colored in, so there's no way of truly differentiating it so much from the background if you think about it, beyond, you know, this one line. As well as the collar of their shirt is one with the hair. There's no strong line of separation between the two of them. As well as the color of the shirt is also the same color as the hair, is also the same color as the background. When we dive deep into the outputs that we were given, you'll notice that at low universe similarities, those things are not limits for it, both in creating variations in theme as well as trying to keep consistent with the original input image. You can see that there is no sense of that in these images. It was able to differentiate nicely. You can tell what's the neck and what's the hair and what's the shirt. And this is uniform for a low universe similarity, as you can see here as well. Mind you, this is just to clarify, this is at an epoch amount of 50. So you can see we get real abstract here. The versatility is amazing, honestly. And in the character design as well, the iteration. Same here, this is at an epoch of 60. And you can see it is, quite frankly, amazing just how much variation we're getting. All of these are completely different art styles. They have completely different colors. The art styles aren't even reminiscent of one overall artistic standard, because we have a very cubic-like form here, versus here is just very realistic. Here is very abstract. So, yeah. And again, those limitations aren't really something that you see here. But as we start to get higher in our epoch values and raise our universe similarity, you'll start to notice those limitations start to become apparent. By limitations, just to clarify again, I'm talking about the limitations of the input image. You can start to see that here a bit, where you're noticing that it's starting to pull back on the amount of manipulation it's doing in that area. So just look at this here, this here, this here, and then when going back to the input image, you can see that that's the same issue we had in our input image. So yeah, at an epoch of 70, you can still see our variation is magnificent, especially when considering alternate versions of our input. You can see that we're even getting full head rotation, and it is a completely usable image. Now, as we raise our epoch value in a low similarity, you'll notice that we're starting to lose our artistic variation, where these arguably are not as wowing, not as amazing as, say, this section at an epoch of 70, or this section at an epoch of 60, or this at an epoch of 50. And this becomes more apparent as we rise into a medium universe similarity. So at a medium universe similarity, you'll start to notice our variation in theme is drastically decreasing. I don't even have as many examples anymore. But the variation, or rather the alternate versions of our original input, they're still very much characterized, still very much usable, still give us this sense of iterative design in terms of world building and character design. We're even getting a lot of variation in skin color, in race, sort of, in gender. But once we raise to a epoch of 60 at a medium universe similarity, the variation has drastically dropped. Arguably, we are losing anything usable in terms of variation. But still standing strong is alternate versions. We have this and this. I just wanted to note from the original input image, that same limitation with the hair and the collar is starting to become more apparent. Although the focal point, which would be the face, the area that had the most, just going back to that original input just to show you, the area that really has the most focus in this art piece is the face. It has the most detail, it has the most for the algorithm to draw from and manipulate. And we can see that all here in the variation. So this is at an epoch of 70 with medium universe similarity. You can see that our variation is virtually just as before at 60, gone, arguably unusable. But still lots of alternate versions of our inputs. And again, like, still completely usable, still completely versatile. And same with 80. Pretty much same, consistent throughout all of medium universe similarity. Once we get too high, that's when, honestly, we completely lose all notions of variation. They are not usable, they don't look good, and our alternate versions of input start to become way more consistent, where if I scroll through this slowly, you'll notice we have minimal variation in head movement, if any at all. And once we start raising to an epoch of 60 at a high universe similarity, our losses, as I mentioned before, become very apparent. And I do want to note again that losses are consistent throughout all values of universe similarity, but they really do increase when raising our epoch amount at a high universe similarity. Same with the complete variations in theme at 60. We're losing it. And I want you to start to notice that our alternate versions of the original input, they're starting to become unusable. These are still usable in that they are many variations, but the little details. So if I just zoom in a bit, you'll start to notice that there isn't as much detail in the eyes or the facial features. The variation is also much more minimal. When we jump up to epoch of 70, altogether there is no variation in theme whatsoever. And again, we're starting to get minimal variation. You'll even start to notice that some of the images, like this one here, this one here, this one here, they're really starting to look alike. Just zoom out a bit. At an epoch of 80, it is very apparent that the manipulation is very subtle. And that same feeling of losing certain details. But something to note is at 70, we had a huge amount of losses, and the details are starting to blur out. But for some reason, 80 at a high universe similarity is much more usable than 70. We still don't get no variation in theme, but the images are much more usable. There's not too much artifacting. But note that we do have a lot of losses. And those losses are mostly in that the images tend to look very, very similar. So I did omit a lot of them, but I included a lot as well.